Hi friends, welcome to The Buzz. I'm Suzy Lyttle, and on this episode we're going to engage all of our senses to explore one of my favorite places in Will County, Hickory Creek Preserve. Then we'll take our eyes to look down on the floor as we learn about an underappreciated habitat, the forest floor. Plus, I'll give you tips on how to make the perfect backyard bonfire. So get ready to go on a hike on this episode of The Buzz. Are you looking for a new place to explore? Let me recommend one of my favorite places, Hickory Creek Preserve. It's one of our largest individual preserves, measuring about 1,600 acres, located in the New Lenox, Mokena, and Frankfort area. It has something to offer during all the seasons, allowing you to use all your senses while experiencing the local flora, fauna, and recreational opportunities. The land here was acquired by the district in 1942 throughout 2010. In the 70s and 80s, a bulk of it was conserved to make room for a regional stormwater reservoir, but it was never constructed. This preserve is so large it has 3 access points: Hickory Creek Junction, Hickory Creek Barrens Nature Preserve, and Hickory Creek LaPorte Road access. The entire preserve is dominated by woodland and aquatic habitats. You may have noticed one of the access points is labeled a nature preserve. The Barrens was dedicated by the state with extra protections in 1998 to preserve a prairie forest transition. This transition includes habitats like prairie and savanna, but also a special soil habitat combo called a silt loam Barrens community. This special community was not previously known to even exist in northern Illinois. Have you ever wondered what this brick building is? This is Shmuel School Museum, which is owned and operated by the New Lenox Area Historical Society. It was originally built in 1932 and it was considered the top of the line as it goes for schools. It had a furnace, electricity, water, and even indoor toilets. The typical enrollment included 12 students spanning over 8 grades, and they were all taught in a single classroom. LaPorte Road access has 2 shelters. One is tucked in the woods, the other one is overlooking wide prairie and forested landscapes. Now this name may sound familiar because we've hosted many programs at LaPorte. Hickory Creek Junction is located right off of Route 30. You can see this big playground from the road. It is an accessible playground made from recycled materials. Further down the road, you'll find a picnic shelter and a map of the preserve. Hickory Creek flows through Joliet, New Lenox, Mokena, Frankfort, and ends in Matson. It's one of the most protected watersheds in the county. It's also one of the most researched, being studied by local schools, universities, and the Field Museum. You may notice a central paved trail throughout all access points. This is Hickory Creek Bikeway. No bike? No problem. This trail can also be used for running or hiking. And let's not leave out the winter activities. You can enjoy this route using cross-country skis or snowshoes. In total, this trail measures about 6.5 miles long, and it's split up into 2 segments, the Barrens and the Junction, then hop onto the Route 30 bikeway to get to the eastern side at LaPorte Road access. You may be here visiting to catch up with a friend or to knock out a workout, but I strongly encourage you to engage all your senses while visiting Hickory Creek Preserve. For example, ditch the headphones and have your ears tune in to the sounds of nature. You'll never know what you'll hear. One day I was hiking and I had to stop dead in my tracks. I heard a loud bellowing barred owl. It was so distinct, I was trying to find anyone else on the trail to share it with. Barred owls are notorious for calling during the day and at night. Several noteworthy birds call this preserve home. I have seen and heard a pileated woodpecker that was calling so loud I thought it was a long-lost dinosaur. In the springtime, if you're in the grasslands, you may hear peent, peent. This is a sound of American woodcock. It's a small but plump bird that does an epic dance and courtship flight come spring. If you take a moment to stop by the creek, you may also hear a This is a bird that looks like kind of a fighter pilot flying through the forest and going head first, diving into the creek for a tasty meal. This is a belted kingfisher. It looks like it has a big blue mohawk, and what it's doing is flying, finding fish, and then if you're lucky, you'll see it stop on a log, whack, whack, whack that fish, and swallow it whole. Spending time in nature is also a good reason to slow down. So take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And while you repeat the process, take in those smells. Fall is one of my favorite smelliest seasons because when the air gets cooler and drier, specific smells stand out. So as the leaves fall from the trees, the organic compounds break down, getting a nice earthy smell. And it brings me back to my childhood, playing in a big pile of leaves and hiding in there until there's someone to jump out and scare. Come spring, I start smelling a different range of smells. In the wetter woodlands, wildflowers take their turn in the sun. The first one to break soil is skunk cabbage. And as the name suggests, you get a strong, stinky smell. Now, throughout the spring, different flowers take their turns, and eventually you'll get a nice, sweet smell of the iconic Virginia bluebells. As summer takes its turn, the prairie will be full of colors and smells. Common milkweed smells like fragrant lilac. Wild bergamot kind of has an essential oil smell, kind of sweet but tart. And there's even a grass called prairie dropseed that smells like buttered popcorn. And of course, remember to keep your eyes wide open, looking in every nook and cranny. Sometimes you may be lucky and see a deer's head pop out behind a tree. Other times you may need to get in for a closer look. For example, one time I was hiking and I saw this big pile of what I thought was like clothes on a bridge. Bikers were just flying by, so it had to be just like trash or something. But when I got closer, I gasped. It was a huge eastern spiny soft-shelled turtle. This was quite a sight to see, as this is one of the largest freshwater turtles we have, with a flat, rubbery shell and a pig-like nose. This magical place is a product of a lot of hard work. There have been many restoration efforts worked on here in this preserve. We've removed invasive species, we've done prescribed burns, and plug planting. All this hard work has been done by our natural resources crews, dedicated volunteers, and Lincoln Way Central High School students who have been coming out here for a decade. Whether you live right down the road or will need to make a road trip, I highly recommend Hickory Creek Preserve as your next destination. This preserve has been embraced by its neighbors, so you're sure to run into some friendly faces. Also remember, every access area has picnic shelters that can be rented for your next family gathering or a place to sit down and relax. And of course, enjoy these trails and use all your senses to immerse yourself in the best of what nature has to offer.
The great egret. These striking white birds can often be seen fishing and flying around Will County, but it wasn't always that way. In fact, they were nearly hunted to extinction in the late 19th century because they were sought after for their pristine white plumes, which were high in demand in the fashion world. There was such a demand that feathers were worth up to $30 an ounce, more than twice the price of gold at the time. Today, these birds serve as a conservation success story. Hunting and trade regulations brought about by conservationists in the early 1900s helped their population rebound, and it's now considered stable. Watching these birds on local waterways can be peaceful and mesmerizing. It's common to see them hanging out on the water's edge, soaking in the scenery, or preening their feathers. While standing still, they keep their necks tucked close to their bodies. But while walking, or when they see something that grabs their attention, great egrets extend their necks, giving themselves a better bird's eye view of what lies ahead. Much like the great blue herons, egrets slowly and patiently stalk their prey in shallow water, then use their razor-sharp bills as a spear. That prey mainly consists of fish, but can also include amphibians, reptiles, birds, small mammals, and crustaceans. These birds are hard to miss considering they stand more than 3 feet tall. In flight, they have a wingspan of nearly 5 feet and need only 2 wing beats per second to cruise at 25 miles per hour. The next time you see a great egret, take a moment to enjoy its raw beauty and be thankful that enough people cared more than 100 years ago to take action and save them.
Fall's the time where I think most people spend looking up. The trees are turning brilliant colors, birds such as small warblers to big sandhill cranes are migrating, and even a lot of squirrels are getting attention from jumping limb to limb, knocking off acorns as they go. But I challenge you to start looking down at this time of year. The forest floor is full of color, life, decay, homes, and tons of food. What do you see when you look down? A bunch of leaves, logs, maybe a few pieces of bark. What's really amazing is that this is the front door to a hidden world. This top layer is called leaf litter, and it is a critical element to the soil and the inhabitants down below. When the leaves decompose or break down, they return nutrients back into the soil, like carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. They also maintain the moisture and the temperature of the soil, which is crucial to those animals that choose to use the leaf litter as a warm blanket throughout winter. Many animals use leaves as a home, from microscopic bacteria and fungi to the larger bugs. For example, some butterflies and moths will lay their eggs on the leaves, while caterpillars will curl up waiting for spring. On the flip side, a lot of birds and small mammals use leaf litter as hunting grounds, eating worms, snails, and other insects mixed in. This special layer is actually linked to species declines if it's not there. For example, one of our migratory birds, the wood thrush, is declining because there's less leaf litter. Because there's less leaf litter, there's less insects for the bird to eat. Luckily, there's an easy way to help. Leave your leaves on your lawn. That's right, cross off raking on your to-do list. Millions of tons of yard waste get sent to the landfill each year, providing no environmental benefit. Leaving the leaves in your yard will actually provide many benefits. One is that when they break down, they make a natural fertilizer. Two, you may see a boost of butterflies. Now, if your neighborhood has strict leaf removal laws, regulations, think about putting the leaves in a garden bed or in a compost pile. As your eyes search the forest floor, you'll see a lot of dead standing trees, also known as snags, downed trees, logs, or pieces of bark. Now, our clean lawn mentality may make us think, what a mess, but in reality, these dead trees serve a purpose. Like leaves, the logs provide a larger scale of shelter and protection. Cavities in trees make excellent homes for a lot of different animals, like squirrels, raccoons, possums, and even owls, who aren't really good at making nests in the first place, so these are like turnkey homes for them. They can also be used as highways. We've caught animals on trail cams using logs to cross creeks and streams, and also chipmunks. They would run right in here to avoid being eaten by a hungry hawk. The U.S. Forest Service is conducting a study to figure out how long it takes for a downed tree to fully decompose. There's a lot of factors involved, including the type of tree, temperature, and how big. But generally, they're figuring out by looking at the forest floor, finding trees, seeing what level of decomposition they are. They're figuring out that a red oak could take 10 years to lose half of its biomass and be fully decomposed in 73. What's really fun is to see what lives underneath these logs. So we'll take a moment to flip some over and investigate. This is a great activity to do at home. So I'll break down some log rolling tips for you. Step 1, find a log that looks like it's been there for a while. Step 2, roll it towards you. This creates a barrier between you and whatever you find. Step 3, dig in and explore. Move leaves out of the way, check for holes, see what you find. Now this is the most important thing. When you're all done, make sure you roll the log back. This is for 2 reasons. So make sure your new buggy friends don't become a meal for the birds above. And when you're out exploring, you always want to make sure you leave the habitat just how you found it. So I'm looking under the leaves. Sometimes there's little hidden things. I try to find holes to see if anyone's hiding in holes. And you kind of have to act quick because a lot of things see the light and scurry away. Both centipedes and millipedes belong to a group called arthropods, and they're different from insects by one obvious reason. Insects have only 6 legs, but centipedes can have over 50, millipedes can have over 100. Now to tell them apart, you look closely at their bodies. Centipedes tend to be flatter and more red, where millipedes are rounder and more brown. They also move a little differently. Centipedes are usually fast and scurry along, while millipedes will roll up into a little ball. They also eat different things. So centipedes are more carnivores, eating smaller bugs, and millipedes are decomposers, eating decaying matter. With our recent wetter weather, I've been finding tons of slugs. Slugs are snails with no shells. They don't have arms or legs, so they move on their stomachs using a muscular and gooey foot. They also have 4 tentacles on their head. 2 have eyes, and the other 2 are used to gather senses, like smell and touch. We also found slug eggs. Slugs will lay eggs all year long. The younger ones will lay fewer, older ones more, but generally they'll lay around 20 to 40 eggs. They'll lay them on the soil surface and use something protective, in our case this log, to cover them. These eggs will overwinter and then hatch come spring. Beetles are true insects. They have 3 body parts, 4 wings, 2 antennas, and 6 legs. They also have life cycles. So here I found a baby beetle. This is like a beetle larva, similar to like a butterfly's caterpillar. I also think of Timon and Pumbaa from The Lion King eating grubs. That's basically little baby beetles. They have a life cycle like butterflies, going from an egg, a larva, a pupa, and then to emerging adult. So that pupa is like that chrysalis. They'll be sitting there silent, just waiting and waiting for the perfect day to emerge as bright new adults. There's about 2,000 different species of beetles in North America. Now, if you catch one, you might get a stinky smell. They release an odor trying to avoid getting eaten by predators. Looking under the leaves, we get to the soil. 90% of the biomass, or living life, is made up of fungus. When we think of fungus, we normally think of mushrooms, but that's just the fruiting body of the fungus. Majority of it lives underground, woven into plant and tree roots. These tiny white thread-like strands are called mycelium. And mycelium is what connects the trees to each other. Foresters call this the wood wide web because a large tree that reaches the sunlight, getting plenty of nutrients, can use the mycelium to spread more food water to a young sapling in the shade. There are about 600 types of fungus in our area, and fungus has many jobs, one of which is to decompose dead matter like this dead tree. It also recycles the nutrients, bringing them back into the soil. And like we learned with mycelium, they also have symbiotic relationships, helping the plants get nutrients. And lastly, they're a food source. Any herbivore or omnivore will eat them. Mixed in with the leaves and the bark and the logs are nuts. And you may notice that not all of these are acorns. Acorns tend to get all the credit, feeding the herbivores and being squirrels' favorite. But our forests tend to be an oak hickory makeup, so there's more nuts than just acorns. Acorns come from oak trees, and they come with a cap and then this hard shell. Now looking at the cap closer, this can give you clues on what kind of oak it came from. This classic shape is from a white oak, but looking at this really furry one, that's from a bur oak. Now to get to the meat inside, you have to crack this hard shell. Picture if you're eating a bag of peanuts and you have to crack the peanut shells. A shagbark hickory tree is one of the easier hickories to identify. The bark looks like it's shaggy and it's going to peel right off. The hickory nuts start in these green husks. These husks split into 4 shells, revealing the meat inside. The biggest nut comes from a walnut tree. Walnuts are usually found close to water, but can be scattered throughout our forest. They start green and they smell like lemon lime. Over time, they kind of decompose, and you want to get into this middle called a kernel. This is kind of wrinkly and it's still hard. You break this open and you'll get your meaty reward. There's always more than what meets the eye when it comes to nature, and the forest floor is no exception. From the leaves to the logs to the critter, all of it has an important role to play. And the best part is you can bring this life into your yard. So leave those leaves or create a woodpile sanctuary. And you can always put more leaves in your garden, so when it's time to grow, you'll have a natural fertilizer. One of my favorite outdoor activities is sitting by a roaring bonfire, but lighting a fire can be a chore. But if you know what to burn and how to build it, the process can be a breeze. In every fire, you need three things: fuel, oxygen, and heat. When it comes to fire, safety first. Make sure you always have water nearby to extinguish the flames. And check conditions. Don't light one on a windy day or during a drought. Plus, check your local regulations for outdoor burning. For a bonfire, fuel is what will be burned, things like sticks, wood, or paper. You may also hear these items referred to as tinder, kindling, and firewood. To start, you need tinder. These are the items that catch the first spark. Examples of tinder include pine needles or dried grasses, pine cones, or man-made items like newspaper and toilet paper rolls. Next is kindling. This gets lit by the tinder and in return lights the larger logs. Examples of kindling are twigs and sticks. Now, a good rule of thumb is to keep your sticks no wider than an adult's thumb. Last is the firewood. Now, best case scenario, you want dried out wood. The fresher it is, the more smoke it will create because the moisture is still locked in. When building a fire, you need to arrange the materials in a structure that allows plenty of oxygen to flow through. Now, there's lots of different structures out there, including like the lean-to or the log cabin. My favorite one is the cone shape. First step is to gather a pile of your tinder and add it to the center of the fire ring. Next, you're going to add your kindling, and this is the part you're going to arrange in kind of a cone shape. Then you're going to light the tinder and keep on feeding that fire with either tinder or kindling, whatever you have, to keep getting those flames to get stronger and stronger. Last step, add in the firewood. Keep on adding firewood to have the biggest fire you desire. So my goal was to stack everything in this kind of cone shape. The kindling worked, but once I got to the bigger logs, there just wasn't enough support to get them to stay in that cone. But as long as you have enough holes for oxygen to go through, your fire will keep building. Enjoy your fire all night long. Tell spooky stories or sing lively songs, but never leave a fire unattended. When the fun is done, make sure you extinguish the flames by pouring water, stirring the ashes, and pouring more water. Repeat this process until the glowing embers are cold before you walk away. From the largest preserve to a small decaying log on the floor, there's so many surprises around every corner. I encourage you to visit Hickory Creek or go to any open space this fall. It's really great to learn your ecosystem. Visit during the day, in the evening, and throughout the year. Nature always changes, so you never know what you're going to find. To help you map your next adventure, head to reconnectwithnature.org to learn more about your Will County preserves. And I hope to see you out peeking underneath the leaves, but until then, I'll see you next time on The Buzz.